Hello everyone, I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Before we get into today's video, a special shout out to my most recent super thankers, Master08561, RJ66600, JGS1122, The Real Cheesemaker, James Lamica, Piao Meow Noir and a Waifu Car, and Scott Wood 4123. Thank you all very much for your kind support of my channel. You are the rational caffeine in my anti-apologist energy drink that keeps me combating Creationist Cringe. Thank you very much for helping me to continue to do what I do. And if you like what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. And of course, like this video, maybe even pop in a comment if you feel it. All that really does go a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm and keeping my channel chugging along. Now on to today's video. Well, today we are back with more of that oh-so-face-palmy creationist cringe. While actually attempting to find well-thought-out, well-explained, rational, and sound creationist arguments is a near Herculean task, it appears to be much, much easier to find YouTube shorts and TikToks that have been hastily thrown together by believers that are just barfing up poorly thought out religious talking points. And since they obviously aren't spending much time crafting these points or honing their arguments to a razor-sharp argumentative edge, it also doesn't take time to thoroughly knock them down. So let's pick out some of the choicest chunks of chuckle-worthy claptrap and have a little fun today. So, what's up first?
Atheists are the most ridiculous people in the world. They are stupid. And I know that's going to probably offend a lot of people, but when you really consider what they truly believe, it just doesn't make any sense. Because when we look out into the world, how beautiful it is, like when you see the mountains, when we see the oceans, when we see the skies, the different colors the sky uses with the sun and how it magnifies and reflects, like, there has to be something that created those creations. There has to be something amazing. It doesn't just all randomly form from, like, nothing.
Well, gee whiz and Jiminy Willikers. How can you argue with any of that? Well, let me give it a shot. For starters, you claim that what atheists believe doesn't make any sense. Well, that statement doesn't make any sense because there's nothing specific that atheists believe at all. Now, certainly, every atheist believes in some things, because every human believes in some things. They might believe their spouse will remember their next anniversary without having to be reminded. Or they may believe that the Seahawks will win the Super Bowl next year. Or they might believe in a thing called love. But the point is that there is no unifying belief that all atheists adhere to. Atheism isn't a belief system. It's the lack of a belief system. The only thing that unifies all atheists is what they don't believe in, which is, we don't believe in the existence of any god or gods. So you can't say that our beliefs make no sense. There are no atheist beliefs. Secondly, you are literally, unironically, making a look at the trees argument. How is this still a thing? I thought we had put this atrocious theistic argument to rest a long, long time ago. But every year, there are new, fresh-faced young theists trotting it out again and again. And the worst thing about it is the utter lack of self-awareness of both the argument itself and its theistic proponents. The whole argument that, look at all the beauty and color and the mountains and the sky and the trees around us, it had to come from somewhere, yada yada yada, therefore God. This is an argument rooted in pernicious ignorance. Because you don't understand continental drift and the movement of tectonic plates, you don't understand how mountains form. So, in your ignorance, you shove in, God did it. Because you don't understand atmospheric composition, formed through gravitational influence and affected by simple chemistry and thermodynamics, among many other influences, you don't understand what the sky is and how it works. So in your ignorance, you shove in, God did it. But all that is understandable, if not entirely forgivable, because it's a basic God of the gaps argument. It's not entirely forgivable because these are not actually true knowledge gaps. We know all of these things, how they form and why. So you really don't have any excuse to be this ignorant. But the part of it that is really ass-chap-worthy is trying to turn it around and claim that we are the dumb ones for not accepting your ignorant notion of magic man did magic thing. When you claim that something had to create all of those things, well, yeah, they're called natural forces. We know exactly what created all of those things. We know how mountains formed. We know what the sky is. We know how the planets came together. We basically know what led to pretty much everything forming the way that it did. And there's no evidence whatsoever that any of it happened by way of any kind of supernatural influences. Everything appears to be the result of natural forces doing what natural forces do. But even if there were any reason whatsoever to believe that there was something supernatural behind any of it, that in no way indicates that the specific God that you've hitched your wagon to is the one who did any of it. So, the really illogical thing, the belief that truly makes no sense, is the one that insists on a particular religion and a specific God claim that is unsubstantiated by any evidence and is based on nothing more than wishful thinking and dogmatic indoctrination. So, moving on from that little TikTok, let's see what's up next.
Quick, give me 3 reasons you don't believe in God and I'll give you an answer for each one. Go.
Well, first, I never seen him. I need proof.
Well, listen to this. You would have never known Mars existed unless somebody saw it with a telescope. Same thing. The only people who find God are the ones who actually seek him. Take the time and seek him.
Okay then, but why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, bad things happen as proof that we're living in a fallen world. That's why it's even more important for you to believe in Jesus. Remember, he died on the cross and he said, in this world you will have sorrows, but fear not, for I am with you. So if you're worried about the bad things, put your trust in Jesus. He'll get you through them.
Well, I'm an intellectual and I believe in evolution.
Well, check this out. Believing in evolution is like believing you can win the lottery over 100 million times in a row. It's like believing a tornado can go into a junkyard and out comes out a Lamborghini. Let me tell you something. The Bible says that in the beginning, God created us. I mean, just look at your genes. They're a code. They're sophisticated. They're complicated. Only a creator could have done that.
You're right. I believe.
Oh boy. Let's see here. We've got straw manning, faulty conclusions, and scientific illiteracy all jammed together in under a minute. That's actually impressive. So, this guy throws out 3 reasons people don't believe in God. Not only did he not even get to any of the really good reasons to not believe in a God, such as the glaring inaccuracies of the Bible, or really any holy text for that matter, the problem of evil in the face of a supposed triomni God, or just the outright lack of conclusive evidence to warrant such a belief. Instead, we have the 3 anti-God belief reasons that this fella posits. The first of which is utter nonsense and a complete straw man.
First, I never seen him. I need proof.
I've never heard an atheist say this. More importantly, though I don't know you, your life, or your experiences, I feel comfortable in saying you've never heard an atheist say this either. Because no one says this moronic claptrap. This is a complete straw man of atheist arguments. And yet it seems to be one of the most common things that theists claim atheists say. Well, no, we don't. We do say that there's no conclusive evidence for God, and then your retort that we wouldn't know Mars existed unless someone saw it is a perfect example of why you're wrong. Because another one of the 8 planets in our solar system was found without it being seen. With the 1781 discovery of Uranus, the number of known planets in the solar system grew to 7. As astronomers continued to observe the newly discovered planet, they noticed irregularities in its origin that Newton's law of universal gravitation could not fully explain. However, effects from the gravity of a more distant planet could explain these perturbances. Because you see, it's not about what we are able to perceive with our eyes, or detect with any of our fallible human senses. It's about evidence. And so, by way of the evidence, the gravitational evidence, and the mathematics we were able to do, we discovered Neptune, without it ever having been seen prior. So it's about what you can rationally prove through a preponderance of the evidence. What actually exists versus what you just want to exist. Secondly, you respond to the notion that,
Okay then, but why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, bad things happen as proof that we're living in a fallen world. That's why it's even more important for you to believe in Jesus.
or bad things happen because we live in an undesigned, unplanned, naturally formed world and universe where bad things happen because there is no guiding hand or master plan. Sometimes good things happen, sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes we will laugh, sometimes we will cry. Some people will get lucky, some people will experience tragedy. Because it's the natural occurrences of a completely natural universe. The fact that random bad stuff happens and you actually see that as further proof of your theistic worldview shows just how ingrained it is. Even evidence that should show you that you're wrong just further confirms to you that you're, in fact, right. Besides, the idea that we live in a fallen world and that's why you should believe in God more than ever does nothing to truly address the problem of evil, which this reason is actually attempting to address. If God is truly omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, then he should have the power, knowledge, and desire to make the world in such a way that bad things do not happen. And there could be no rational argument against that. Humans caused the fall. An omniscient God would have seen that coming in advance and used his omnipotent power to prevent it. But humans have free will. An omnipotent God would have been able to create humans with free will, but also in such a way that they wouldn't have fallen to sin. But we have to suffer to prove that we're worthy of God. An omnibenevolent God would not require us to suffer in order to prove anything. And an omnipotent God would have created us in such a way that we wouldn't need suffering to prove anything, etc. Any objection you can bring up can then be countered by the supposed tri-omni nature of the God you believe in. There's no argument you can make that can justify the existence of evil in the face of a tri-omni God. Any God who exists, who created this world and the evil in it, either doesn't have the power to avoid evil, doesn't have the knowledge of how to avoid evil, or doesn't have the desire to avoid evil. Or, and hear me out here, he doesn't exist at all. And to your third point.
Well, I'm an intellectual, and I believe in evolution.
Well, check this out. Believing in evolution is like believing you can win the lottery over 100 million times in a row. It's like believing a tornado can go into a junkyard and out comes out a Lamborghini.
That is one big pile of shit.
This is pure scientific illiteracy. You aren't going to just breeze in here and undermine established science with some nonsense claim about tornadoes and junkyards and Lamborghinis. For starters, it's yet another straw man to claim that believing in evolution is a sufficient reason to not believe in God that atheists make. According to Pew Research, over 80% of adults in the U.S. believe in evolution, even though a majority of them believe that evolution was guided by God. And literally over half of every Christian denomination accepts the reality of evolution. So accepting evolution is no barrier to believing in God. But trying to deny evolution is as ridiculous as trying to deny construction methods and instead claim that houses assemble themselves through wizards waving their wands and casting spells. We can literally witness evolution happening in the world around us. In some cases, evolution has occurred in the wild over time scales and in places that we can make direct observations of. That is, we humans know what a species was like at one point in time, and then later observe that it has changed in ways that can only be attributed to evolution. We can see it in viruses that adapt to medications to become more resistant, fish that evolve to tolerate pollutants, etc. We have countless examples in the fossil record that show a clear line of progression from one type of animal into another. We have volumes and volumes of data that confirm evolutionary theory to the most concrete level of scientific certainty possible. And you think you're going to blow all of that up with an oft-repeated and laughably debunked statement about junkyard Lambos in the tail end of a poorly slapped-together TikTok?
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
Let's see what else we've got out there.
And I think most Christians believe this too. The idea of having a moral atheist is not really a difficult idea.
Yeah.
It's the idea of having a system built on atheism that's completely immoral and will fall apart almost immediately, and the idea of having a moral system built on atheism, if you examine your atheism closely enough, I think falls apart. I think that moral atheism is basically you separating your morality from your atheism and then ignoring your atheism in pursuit of the morality, which is, well, you can live fine that way, that's fine, but I don't think that that's psychologically sustainable if you actually examine the core of your ideas.
Oh, look, it's been My Wife is a Doctor and I Hate WAP Shapiro. Getting things completely bass-ackwards again, I see. So he's claiming here that while atheists can be moral, a moral system built around atheism is, I guess, impossible, and any moral atheist would have to ignore their atheism in pursuit of morality. So, atheistic morality, or as it's more commonly called in philosophy, secular morality, is not only absolutely a thing, it's sometimes thought to be more moral than religious-based moral systems. Atheist ethics shows that morality is more than possible without God. It is entirely independent of Him. That means atheists are not only more than capable of leading moral lives, they may even be able to lead more moral lives than religious believers who confuse divine law and punishment with right and wrong. This is why religion almost invariably runs into moral issues when it's based upon dogma that insists, for instance, that it was right and good for Abraham to murder his son Isaac, because it's what God commanded. Even though God supposedly stopped him at the last minute, if he hadn't, and Abe had gone through with it, it would have been the morally right thing to do, because it's supposedly what God wanted. This has always been a major sticking point with religious morality, particularly Judeo-Christian morality. Slavery? A-okay. Stoning your disobedient children to death? Right on, brother. Genocide? Yeah, I'm sure they had it coming anyway. And I mean, in the end, the proof is in the pudding. There are countries in this world that are highly religious and base their general cultural ethics and laws around their religiously imposed morality. And there are countries that are largely secular in how they govern and their cultural views of right and wrong. If Ben's claims are to be believed, we should see that the more religious a society, the more ethical and moral it acts, while the more secular a society, the more chaotic and lawless it would be. But is that what we see in reality? Absolutely not. The reverse seems to be true. The stats bear out that, in fact, the more secular the country, the less their crime rates tend to be, as well as, not for nothing, but the more happy and well-off those countries tend to be as well.
No. I don't believe it. It's not possible.
Well, sorry, Ben. It's a real pain in the ass when the facts don't care about your feelings, isn't it? Well, one more before we bow out. So what else do you have for me, Algorithmo?
The Bible tells us of a worldwide flood that radically changed the climate and devastated the continents thousands of years before scientists would even propose ice ages. The irony being that these same scientists would confirm the possibility of great global floods on planets like Mars and yet still deny a global flood was possible on Earth. You see, the Bible already stated there was a worldwide flood, and they don't want to validate the Bible. They'll come up with any other explanation but the truth.
Oh, the Bible said there was a worldwide flood, did it? There are so many ways to debunk and disprove the notion of a global flood. For starters, there simply isn't enough water on the planet to flood all of the land. I mean, it's not like the continents are giant islands that are just floating on top of the ocean. The continents are connected to the tectonic plates that sit under the water and essentially form the solid core of the Earth. Geologist David Montgomery discusses this in his book, The Rocks Don't Lie. He says, not only is there not enough water in the Earth's system to account for water levels above the highest mountaintop, but uniformly rising levels would not allow the water to have the erosive capabilities attributed to Noah's flood. But that is just one of a myriad of reasons to disbelieve the idea of Noah's flood. From fossil evidence that has survived from far longer ago than any claim of when the flood happened, which the found fossils could never have survived the flood, and yet they have, to historical data that shows the entire flood myth was merely the fusing of stories about regional floods that happened in the 17th and 18th centuries BCE. And I really don't see how saying that scientists found that global floods may have occurred on Mars somehow means that there must therefore have been a global flood on Earth. I mean, you do realize that Earth and Mars are two different planets, right? Oh, and by the way, in a move that shows just how scientifically illiterate they were, or maybe more likely, their hope that no one would check on the things that they were saying, but instead just accept them outright. In fact, scientists never said there was ever a global flood on Mars. The research that they're alluding to was that billions of years ago, there were networks of rivers on Mars that flooded, which created the network of dry valleys that are seen on Mars today. Rivers flooding is not the same as a global flood. There was still plenty of dry land. I mean, that's how the canyons on Mars formed. The rivers cut the canyons through the dry land. That's how canyons work. Not that any of it really matters, because again, Mars and Earth are not the same thing. So that's about all the creationist nonsense I can handle for one day. Oh, but don't fret, dear viewer. We've barely scratched the surface of all the short-form, absolutely astonishing, theistic malarkey that is out there. And what's truly disheartening about it all isn't how poorly conceived and delivered these arguments are, if you can even call some of them arguments. It isn't how pervasive these so often repeated claims are, despite the near constant debunking by anti-apologists, both on this platform as well as others. It isn't even the sheer volume of how many of these little tidbits of biblical numbnuttery there are. It's how many of them rack up such an impressive number of views, thumbs up, and positive comments of support from fans. As if they're actually making salient points and people respond with accolades of, "Yeah, totally, you absolutely schooled those heathen buffoons," and "keep doing the Lord's work in educating the poor wretches." It's like, I have no problem with strong arguments passionately delivered by well-reasoned advocates. But in all my time delving into the realm of religious apologetics, I found those types to be extraordinarily lacking, while videos and arguments like those we've seen here today are largely the norm. And so that's where we'll leave things for today. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Till next time, I'm Professor Plink, reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.